All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another round of Big Time, the podcast. And we're keeping fantasy drafts going. They're popular. They're in demand, so we're going to keep them going. And this one's going to be a little bit lighter compared to some of the ones in the past. So we're doing men's softball from Fort Kent, right? I think that's what we're going with here. So we got some familiar names. We got some new names joining the podcast, and it's going to be a good time, as always. So with that, we're just going to jump into who we got, making his I don't know how many appearances. He's a regular. He's a regular in the pod. We got Laughn Berthiaume back on the pod for the softball draft. And Laughn, people may be asking, they might know you from soccer, from basketball, baseball in high school. They might not know that you had a softball career as well. Just explain to them your softball experience.
Yeah, so I sort of got recruited out of 8th grade coming into my freshman year. I looked for my John's Country Store t-shirt. I couldn't find it. I did find this BJ's one while I was looking, but Bob Thibodeau, phys ed teacher. I jumped onto their team early, so I got my start with John's Country Store out of St. Francis. Wow.
And once again, whether it's your backgrounds or your wardrobe, on point tonight with the BJ shirt. I like that.
Thank you. This one's a 30th anniversary t-shirt.
I like that.
Oh.
From Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, or Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, we got Fort Kent's finest, Charlie the Great back. Charles, coming off your first victory with the basketball draft. How are you feeling tonight?
Pretty good. I'm now 1-2 in the season, so momentum's my way. Brought the lucky hat again here tonight, so still loving it. I'm actually realizing that Lorne actually played sports. I didn't know much about this guy, so it's exciting.
We only got 3 teams tonight. Our third captain making his debut. His name has been brought up a lot. He was drafted on the soccer podcast. Lon talked about him on his podcast back in the day, and he's been mentioned a lot of other times. We got Tim Desjardins making his debut. Tim, how are you doing tonight? How are you feeling? Are you nervous at all? I mean, what are you thinking?
Good, man. Nerves are
good. For those that don't know, so obviously you were a soccer coach for a long time at Fort Kent, very successful there. For those that may not know your softball background, just explain to the folks your softball experience.
Oh, softball experience. I've been playing for 107 years. Started out real young, like Lonnie. Got recruited on the Lightning with Tracy Hart. Big dude. Actually, that's how long I played. I got recruited to Voisin's Construction with Greg Voisin, Tony Terrio, Dave Michaud, Dean Saucier. Started there at 13. I was about 13, 14 years old. And then went to the Lightning, and then it's all downhill from there. Still playing now.
Yeah, so one question I have for you is Lon mentioned on his podcast that you gave him some great advice when he was a young guy making his debut on varsity soccer to never jump over the goalie, right? To go, what was the exact words, Lon?
I think the exact words were, "Don't you ever jump over him again. You kick him right in the fucking head."
Is that? Do you have any similar advice for the softball field? I mean, what would you give advice to someone who's just starting off?
Softball?
Yeah.
Make the play, man.
Okay.
Make the play. You got to take it in the teeth. Take it in the fucking teeth. Make the fucking play.
All right. And also making his debut, we got Lorne Guy, who's making his podcast debut. And he's going to serve as our resident expert and spent a lot of time officiating softball back in the day and is familiar with all these guys. And he came prepared. So, Lorne, for those that may not know your background, just explain to the viewers your connection with men's softball in the Fort Kent area.
So my father got me interested in umpiring at a very young age as well. I think I finished playing Little League, and then I started almost right away umpiring Little League games. And then before I knew it, I was doing some of the local men's league games and getting involved in the school level as well. So I started relatively at a young age, and then after I left Aroostook County to go live down in Ellsworth for a bit, I started coaching down there and had a little bit of fun doing that and just doing something different. Then I took so after umpiring for about 14 or 15 years, my wife and I started our family up north. We moved to the Northwest Territories, and I took a a 15-year break from umpiring. And when we made our choice to move back to Atlantic, well, we're here in Atlantic, Canada now. When we made that choice, my wife says, hey, you know, they're going to be looking for coaches. And I said, you know what? They're going to be looking for umpires as well. And I couldn't wait to get back into it. So I've been back into it. I did 100 games last year, and I'm rearing to go this year. I'm just hoping that I get a chance to do it this year.
So for those that know you, and for maybe those that don't, you're not a little guy. You've got some size to you. You got some length. Is it tough being behind the plate? I mean, you got to get down in a crouching position. I'm guessing that's got to take its toll on you after a while.
Yeah, I guess. All you got to do is you got to try your best, I guess. I don't do as much fast pitch anymore, so the slow pitch, it's a little bit easier to stay behind the catcher and try and see the ball the best that you can, and try not to get into arguments with guys like Timmy Desjardins.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're hoping there's no arguments tonight, but who knows? We'll see what happens.
I'm sure there'll be a few.
Yeah.
Luckily for this podcast, if Tim gets out of hand, we can mute his mic.
That's true. So, and Lorne, before we get started here, I just want to get your take on these guys as players. I don't know if you ever Charles, because Charles is the young guy in the crew, but I'm guessing you spent some time watching both Tim and Laughn. So if you could just give us the scouting report on those guys, at least on the softball field.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. I think you played Little League for the Lions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he and I would have played together.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't long after that. He said he started at 13. It wouldn't have been long after that I'd have been doing his games.
Yeah.
And, you know, Timmy played and I'm thinking that he probably does the same thing today. He plays at 110% all the time, and he plays hard and plays to win. And that's always a fun. He was always a fun guy to umpire, that's for sure, because you knew you were going to get his best. And you know, Laughn was just a really good athlete. I mean, there were a lot of good athletes that came out of Fort Kent Community High School, but getting a chance to umpire Laughn's softball games too, you know, and seeing him develop as a player was certainly a treat to watch. And Charles, I did get the chance to see you at mini basketball. That's, you know, when Dan Clifford was running his camps, that's where I got to know you a little bit. And you were certainly fun to watch there. So I was really excited about tonight, and I'm really looking forward to where this goes today.
Absolutely. So we're just going to get into it. So first order of business, once again, Charles, I didn't coordinate with you ahead of time, but I know you come prepared because you live and die for this show right here. You love these drafts. So
That's it, man.
First order of business is our draft lottery. So we're going with the third pick first.
Exactly. Before I make the pick, I'm just going to take a moment to recognize Lorne can relate to this. Some tragedy happened in Nova Scotia here yesterday, so the province is grieving. So shout out to everybody from Nova Scotia who's watching this. And really, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody. Thank you to the RCMP and all the law enforcement looking after us. So, all right, one love. Let's get the show going. All right, yeah, swing the bag. I got 3 names in here. I'm just going to go random pick. First name I pick will get the third pick, second pick, then first pick. So let's go here. First one, third pick in the draft. We got Tim.
You're a loser, Charlie.
I haven't got a first pick yet. Is tonight the night? Let's go. Number 2 pick, we're going. Laughn. Yes. And then number 1, finally.
I'm protesting.
There it is.
So I find it a little peculiar that you find that when your first draft, then all of a sudden you win the draft lottery here. What's going on? Is it the hat or is there more to it?
Might be the hat. It's called momentum.
Momentum, okay. So real quick, the rules for tonight's fantasy draft is it's a 9-player draft, and the guys will make their picks based on whoever they want to pick at the time. And then at the end, once everyone has drafted all 9 players, we're going to give them a minute to set their lineup, see where they want to put people, where they want to put them in the order. And then Lorne will decide tonight's winner. So we're just going to get right into it. Charlie, you're on the clock with your first overall selection here. And actually, you know what? Before we get started, I'm going to bring Lorne in, our expert. Just curious, if you're building a men's softball team here, what's your approach? You going to try to get a pitcher early in the draft? Are you going to try to get a big bat early on? Well, what would be your approach to building a team here?
Well, I mean, the big thing about softball is such an offensive game, and if some of these guys are really paying attention, I guess I'm looking for those guys that can hit the ball, but also play a little bit of defense as well. So it'd be neat to see if they're thinking about a well-rounded player, and so that's what I would be looking for today. And the other thing too is, there was a couple of waves of generations that went through in Fort Kent softball, and if you think about the 70s was when it was kind of initiated, and there were players in there like Lon's father, Fran, and my father that played, and all the Bards and those families, and then when our generation came through, it was kind of that younger generation, and I don't even know if they play softball in Fort Kent anymore. So, you're looking at
my son plays.
It's quite a span there, but lots of good players that came through, and I'll be interested to see if these guys have done a little bit of their homework.
And this is slow pitch, right, guys? We're doing slow pitch?
Yeah.
All right.
Lucky,
So,
I was going to pick Legs Labu if it was fast pitch.
I was going to say Legs has got to be on there if it was fast pitch, but we're going slow pitch. Charles, real quick, how many names on your draft board tonight?
This is an all-time record. I actually had to retire the whiteboard for this one for two reasons. The first reason is the last one I used a permanent marker, not a. So I spent a few hours scrubbing that, so it's retired for this week. And the second reason, once I started reaching out to my sources, I realized that this was going to be the biggest number of names that I've gotten of all the drafts. So I currently have 14 people who have donated names, and I got a total of 371 names in front of me.
God, look at you.
A lot of them are repetitive, but yeah, I'll go through my sources. Phil Labby, Steve Barrow, Tracy Hart, Kelly O'Leary. I got Legs, Bob Parent, Lloyd Susie, Bob Loze, Gary Thibodeau, Robert Plord, Jason Netto, Murph, and Tony Terrio have all contributed.
All right. So with that, Charles, you're on the clock with your first overall pick out of those 300-plus names. Where are you going here?
For sure. I'm going with one of the athletes that I've respected a lot, seeing this guy control the mound and also foul line to foul line. He's probably the best opposite field hitter I've ever seen with pinpoint accuracy. I got to go with my man, Phil Labby. I actually talked to Phil in this process too, man. It was good to hear his voice. What a great guy. And always a good laugh when Phil's around. It's not even about winning or losing. It's about having a good time when Phil's around. So.
And I know you got to be excited about getting that first pick, because when we talked a couple of days ago, you said that's where you wanted to go if he was on the board. So you got to be feeling pretty good right now.
I'll tell you, there's quite a few. It was going to be tough. Second and third pick, there's some ringers out there, that's for sure. But I'm happy to get Phil for sure.
All right, so we'll have everyone make their picks for the round, and then we'll bring Lorne in. So, Lon, your first overall selection.
Yeah, Phil's a good choice. I mean, the other thing that he could do is he could defend up the middle. I mean, when balls were hit up the middle, he was like a hockey goalie there. He was awesome. He could really defend his spot. But before I make my pick, though, one of the guys I reached out to this week was Bun Ross, and he asked me to say hi to Joey Bard. And so, Bun had a special request. He played softball with my father in the 70s, and so I wanted to give a shout out to Joey. All right, so my first pick. Played. He was one of the older guys, power hitter, and he was automatic at the plate. Also, high school basketball coach. I mean, there's a couple guys that their names start with a double L. It's LL Cool J and Lloyd Susie. So I'm going Lloyd Susie.
That's awesome.
And Lloyd was also the baseball coach for a while.
He was.
Right? Okay. And then, Tim, we're up to you with your first overall selection.
Well, you need a good leadoff hitter. Somebody get the bat on the ball and run like hell. He could catch anything, anywhere. He could play all four. He could play outfield, infield. And you know what? I bet you he could pitch. But that's my buddy Steve Parrow.
Steve Parrow gets drafted on every draft, just always at the top.
I know.
So, Lorne, your thoughts on those three picks? Phil Labby, number 1. Lloyd Susie, number 2, Steve Parrow, number 3, for the first 3 picks off the board.
I couldn't disagree with any of you guys. I mean, I think they're all really solid picks. Phil was absolutely dynamite up the middle. He was fearless. There were not many balls that got by him up the middle. I didn't get a chance to see Coach Susie pitch very much, but I will say that my father talked about his knuckleball. He said that thing would dance as soon as it left his hands. And I know that he played third base as well. He was very solid there, a good hitter. And Steve Perro, I mean, he made every single a double, and he made every double a triple. So you got to feel really good about that pick, Tim. That was a solid pick for sure. Very impressed. These guys have done their work.
I will say, too, I had my doubts coming into this one because I know absolutely nothing about the subject. I don't know any of these players, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. But I'm into it now. I'm fired up. Fantasy drafts. It's unbelievable. Big time. Yeah. So, Tim, we're doing a snake draft, so you get to go next for your second overall pick. We're right back to you.
Well, I went to high school with this guy, and he was crazy on the soccer field. I mean, he jumped higher and headed the ball higher than the keeper could jump with his hands. This guy was crazy. Outfielder, he would bait the other guy batting the ball to try to burn him. He'd play sometimes right behind third, and he would catch it every time. So this guy is at number 2 hole for me, batting second, and he's playing left field as Stephen Jalbert.
That's a good start.
Yep.
Another guy who's I think Steve's been drafted on every fantasy draft so far too. Back to Lon, your second overall selection.
See, so again, I'm going with some old school guys. Again, I've got some information, but I also grew up around my father's teams. But this is a guy that played for a long time, and you need somebody that's on the mound that can control the game. And this guy had a knack of being able to get that ball just as close to the top of the strike zone, as far as being illegal, and then land it right behind the plate. See, you think I'm going Benny Neto, Tim. I'm not going with Benny Neto. I'm actually, I see you laughing. It was like Benny was like playing dodgeball when he was up the middle. I love playing with him, but I'm not going with Benny. I'm going with Louis Morrow.
Oh, okay.
Nice. I had him on my not to pick list.
Charles, back to you for your second overall selection.
Before I make the pick, other than Tim and myself, does anyone else have a state championship softball trophy in their house?
I got 2.
You got 2? Okay.
I don't have one of those.
No, all right.
Well, I got 3.
3 now.
But who's counting?
With my next pick, I'm going to go with a teammate of myself and Tim when we went to the States and won the States. He's always been the leader as long as I've played, with Phil at first, connecting with the ground balls, the big Tracy Hart at first base.
Tracy Hart.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren, your thoughts on those 3 picks: Steve Jalbert, Louis Morrow, and Tracy Hart.
Steve Jalbert covered a lot of ground, as Tim has said, and it's a very, very strong pick. And I remember several times that he would catch balls that were over the foul line, but he would catch them, and it was actually close to the out-of-play line. So there were a lot of times that he would catch a ball that wasn't going to be fair, and we'd have to kill the play afterwards because he was out of play after he caught the ball. So he covered a lot of ground. He's very quick out there. Louis was Mr. Consistency. He would draw a spot. The catcher would draw a spot right behind the plate, and he would hit it probably at least 3 or 4 times out of 10. It was fun to watch. And with Big Tracy, I'll tell you, they had to put in the home run rules when Tracy would play, because he could hit it out any time. He had a heavy bat, and he had a heavy swing, and it was fun to watch him for sure.
All right, Charles, right back to you with your third pick.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna go. This is a good pick too, I think here. This name was mentioned a lot. Again, I was a youngster during the four-cant league, but there's a few players that stuck out to me. And for some reason, Kevin Bouchard could smash a ball, if I'm not mistaken.
We're going to find out if your research paid off here in a second, but we're going back to Laughn for your third pick.
See, so Kevin Bouchard was next up on my board. I mean, that's a good pick too. All right, so I'm gonna go with the first baseman. This guy defensively as good as anybody at first base. Offensively, he was a smart hitter, hit for a great average. He was a master of being able to hit behind a runner. If there was a runner on first, he was going to hit behind him, and that runner was going to be able to go to, first to third. And he always had 2 full coolers that he brought to the games with him. So afterwards was always fun. I'm going with Paul Marquis.
Right.
That's a good pick.
Shout out to Paul, who just made his debut on the podcast. And number 3 pick, Tim, who you going with?
Well, I'm going to go with somebody that I don't think you guys know, but you need to take my word for it. He's the best softball player I've ever seen play. I played on his team. We just won the state championship in 2018. He's my little nephew. I got him started playing. That guy is crazy. He's been going to the Worlds and invited on teams to go to Worlds for 10 years now. It's Tommy D. In the 3-hole for me.
He's still improving. He's still on the rise, Tommy D, because he's been good for a few years.
Oh, he's still it's unbelievable. He can paint the lines. He hits from the left side, and he can paint the lines with power. I mean, his power all around. It's crazy.
So this isn't your brother?
That's my nephew. No, that's not Tom.
All right, so Lorne, your thoughts on round 3? Paul Marquis, Tommy Desjardins, Kevin Bouchard. Thoughts on those picks?
So I certainly remember Kevin when he was first coming up, and I think there was one game I was watching against Eagle Lake, and they had asked the outfielders to come in. He was probably 13 or 14 years old, and the outfielders came in, and I remember him trying to hit the ball over their heads, and he just wasn't strong enough to do it. And I remember some people were a little bit upset because Eagle Lake had done that tactically. And I remember some of the guys on the bench saying, yeah, they won't be doing that next year. And before you knew it, Kevin was hitting a lot of the balls. The field couldn't hold him. And really solid defensively up the middle too, whether he was playing shortstop or second. He was really solid. I played with Paul in high school as well. I played with him in Little League. True competitor, likes to play the game, and is smart too. We all know what his coaching career has been like, but he was just as smart as a player as well, and that's a really strong pick, Long. And I'm glad to hear that about your nephew, Tim. I don't think I've ever seen him play, but it's good that you're doing something with your family members, and I'm sure that if Tommy's doing well, he learned a little bit from his uncle, that's for sure.
Yeah, just a little, yeah.
He's actually the most mild-mannered kid you'll ever meet. He's so far off the Desjardins path, it's crazy.
Does he have the classic Desjardins leg kick on the swing?
No. He's tall and lanky. He's like 6'2". He's 6'2", 6'3". And, I mean, he paints it anywhere. It's great. And defensively, he's crazy. He was on our team, Charlie.
Oh, for sure.
We won the States. He was our second baseman when Doggy got hurt.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah.
So, Tim, we're back to you for your 4th pick.
Okay, I need to put somebody on the mound here. And this guy, when we needed a big hit, we got it out of him. He was big pull. Very big man, not with a lot of power, just a lot of line shots in the hole between third and short. a little over the head of the third baseman, line shots, and he knew when to pull a hit out in the clutch. And this guy could flirt with the arc and drop it right behind the plate. It was crazy. And a lot of people had a hard time to hit him because of the arc. And the umpires would have a hard time with him because they didn't know what to call illegal or not. But I need to put someone on the mound here, and it's Fudge, Robbie Bouchard.
And the thing about Rob too is, I mean, if you went to a tournament with Rob, when he comes to the plate, everybody backs up. And Timmy's saying he's not trying to hit it over the fence. He's trying to hit it over the third baseman's head or between short and third. So the outfield is wide open because he's so big. He looks like he's just going to mash the ball, and he just places it right in there.
Yeah, what a great guy to have around. Just a nice guy, fun-loving, and we'd always have fun with Robbie.
Laughn, we're back to you with your 4th overall selection.
All right, so I'm going to grab a guy who is speedy in the outfield. You talk about a guy that could turn a single into a double and so on. Tough, track down balls. I'm going with Sean Corsi.
Nice.
Yep. I'm stealing your picks. You're stealing my picks, my friend.
Was Sean big back then? Was Sean pretty big back then?
He was jacked, not tall, but he wasn't anybody you were going to mess with. That's for sure.
Yeah. And him too was mild mannered. He had a great attitude, nice guy to have around. And of course he had a badge. Every now and again, I didn't have to call anyone to bail me out. He already knew where I was.
Charles, we're back to you with your 4th overall selection.
I'm a competitor. I like to compete. There's not too many guys on this planet that would go head-to-head with Timmy here in a competition battle. I'm going to have to go with an outfielder, Travis Delisle.
Okay.
He likes to win.
All right. So, Lorne, your thoughts on those picks? Travis Delisle, Sean Corsi, Robbie Bouchard.
So I don't remember Sean, and I'm sorry if I'm not trying to offend him or anything. I just don't remember him, but it sounds like he was a really good guy to have around, and also could fill the role that you were looking for.
He was on the Lakeview Aces teams.
Okay. Oh, he's not originally from Fort Kent.
He's a Madawaska guy, but
from Madawaska.
You know what? Now I know who he is, and I do remember him. And you're exactly right. Compact hitter, lace the ball around, move the ball around, and play good, solid defense. Yes, absolutely.
And surprisingly fast.
Yeah, Travis. He graduated with my brother, and he played a lot. I remember him with Little League as well. And Travis, a very good competitor, likes to win, as you said, and plays the game the right way. He works at it, tries to get better every game, and if he doesn't do well, he takes that on himself, right? So that's always a fun guy to make sure that you have on your team. And Bob Ford, my goodness, you talk about the umpires struggling with the strike zone or what have you. I always had a sore arm because I was calling so many illegal. When Bob would jump on the mound, and he'd always give me a look. But the funny thing that I remember most about Bob is he was very accurate, and he liked to nibble a lot. He didn't want to give in to the hitters until really late in the count, and then once in a while, he would just, it'd be 3-0, and there'd be a really big hitter up there, and he'd put the ball like this, and he'd say, "Okay, go." If it was Dave Bouchard, or if it was someone or Kevin Bouchard, he'd say, "Okay, Kevin, here it comes." And he would just, no arc on it, he'd just put it right in the middle of the plate. And wouldn't you know, I'd say their batting average would go down because they were just so excited to get to that pitch. And and you would see Bob smirk on his face as he'd leave the mound afterwards. He'd say, "I got him," you know. So that was always kind of fun to watch him do that. So.
All right, so we're almost halfway through here, the draft. So just to recap, Team Charles: Phil Labby, Tracy Hart, Kevin Bouchard, Travis Delisle. Team Laughn, we got Lloyd Susie, Louis Morrow, Paul Marquis, Sean Corsi. Team Tim, we got Steve Perro, Steve Jalbert, Tommy Desjardins, and Bob Lord. So we're back to Charles with your 5th overall selection.
I'm going to drop this name. I remember him at a very young age. I think he moved away when I was young too, so that's probably why it's a little bit hazy. Probably made the best donuts in town as a youngster. Could smash the ball, but I'm going to go with the big Jim Jarvis.
Yeah. He could hit the ball.
He could.
We are back to Laughn with your 5th pick.
Yeah, Jim was a middle school basketball coach too.
I remember that.
Let's see. You know what? I'm going with athletic infielder. He was always a guy we played. I was never on his team. Always played against him, and he seemed to be a guy that was hard to get out all the time, and really difficult to get the ball by. And he's been mentioned a few times on the podcast for different things. I'm going with Bob Parent.
Yeah.
Charles, are you upset? I feel like Bob's your guy. I feel like you try to get Bob for everything. You okay?
And Bob and I got a pretty good relationship going, like with the whole incident happening in Nova Scotia. Bob reached out to me yesterday and said, "Hope you and your family are safe." So he's loving these podcasts. He's got me 13 names here tonight too. So great pick, great guy. So much love to Bob Aaron out there.
Tim, we're back to you with your 5th pick.
My 5th pick, this guy can play anywhere. Fast. You think Stephen Perro was fast or Lonnie was fast? This guy was crazy fast.
You can't pick me there, Tim.
Had a great stick. Yeah, Bart, you weren't that fast. You were on the bench, buddy. But good slap hitter, power when he needed it, but just put the ball in holes. If you bobbled it or held on to it at all, at any point, whether it's you fielded it clean, you wouldn't throw him out at first base. Pappy, Roderick Thibodeau. Not Roderick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roderick, yeah.
You don't mean
I know all their names are like the same in that family.
Robbie, Roderick, Rodney.
Yeah.
Gary.
All right, so round 5, Jim Gervais, Bob Parent, Roderick Thibodeau. Lauren, any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I certainly remember all of them, and it's nice to see, the St. Francis connection with Roderick and the Eagle Lake connection with Bob Parent. That was what was great about the Fort Kent League is you had St. Francis had a team, Eagle Lake had a team, Wallagrass would have a team, Soldier Pond, and there'd be always like 3 or 4 teams from Fort Kent, and it always created some nice rivalries. And so nice that Tim and Laughn have done their homework. And Jim, his eyes got big when he saw those donuts, but I'll tell you, some of those pitches came in pretty fat too, and he took care of them in good order. So good picks all around in this round.
All right, Tim, we're back to you with your 6th pick.
Well, I need a second baseman. And this has always been, there's a lot of them. I mean, Robbie Tibbs from St. Francis. My brother-in-law, Dale Sussy, in his time could play ball and hit. But I think I'm going to go old school here. I'm going to go with Murph. Larry Murphy.
All right.
Larry Murphy, just a competitor. I mean, he coached me to be a competitor. I'm a competitor, and I'm the way I am because he coached me my whole life. He started coaching me in Little League, and it just ended up falling. I got lucky. But what he instilled in me to be, just a tough go around, and he used to call me Mr. Hustle. That was the old Pete Rose. The old Pete Rose was Mr. Hustle, and I guess he thought I had a little bit of Rosie in me, I guess. I don't know. But Larry, quite the legend.
Absolutely. Shout out to Coach Murph, who coming off a big appearance on the podcast. Laughn, back to you. Your 6th pick.
Yeah, see if Tim's mother was guarding the plate when he came around third, he'd give her the Pete Rose to win. That's what he was. And he's laughing because he knows I'm right.
Yeah.
All right, so I need another outfielder, and so back in his day, this guy played center field, had speed, he had a rocket arm. He was just a fantastic athlete. Ended up coaching the Allagash women to some state championships. I'm going with Leroy Marquis.
Yeah.
All right, Charles, back to you. Your sixth pick.
I'm going to get some infield presence here. I liked his glove. I played with the fella. I thought he was a tremendous shortstop. Very hard on himself, but it comes from the family bloodline. But I'm going to go with Jeremy Desjardins at shortstop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he had some power that you didn't quite expect. He'd pop some out over the fence that you were just like, where did that come from?
Anger, man. I've never seen somebody with so much like inside anger that you get mad at something and watch out. Here comes Jeremy.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about Timmy.
Well, again,
I think he was worse than I was.
No, hey, listen, I hung out with Jeremy a lot. He's the youngest child. What are there, 6 in the family? And, a bunch of wrestlers. And we were the same age. We were classmates. And Jeremy is an absolute competitor. That's a great pick.
Yeah.
So just to recap.
And real solid all around. So defensively, offensively, somebody you could count on.
he's probably the only Desjardins that goes quiet when he gets angry too. So I like it.
You could tell though, because he would bite his tongue. He'd get pissed and he had the tongue out and he was ready to go. You could tell.
Yeah.
So to recap, round 6, Jeremy Desjardins, Leroy Marquis, Larry Murphy. Thoughts on those picks, Lorne?
So Jeremy, I think Tim said it at the top of the podcast that, whenever you're playing, you got to make sure that you give it everything you got. And sometimes you got to take a ball in the teeth. And I always thought that Jeremy was willing to do that for his team. And I didn't see him make a lot of errors at shortstop. That's for sure. A good hitter as well.
Even in jean shorts.
Even in jean shorts. which did happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then the two older generations with Leroy Marquis and Larry Murphy, and I know my father told a lot of old hotel stories or DJ stories when Leroy and him played the outfield, and there were times that Leroy would get upset with my father for what he would call stealing his ball out there in left center. They'd be fighting over it. But Leroy was he was quite a character to watch play and a good competitor. And obviously Paul learned a lot from his dad. And then, you've got Coach Murphy, who was tough as nails and brought it every night. And in softball, there's a lot of momentum that goes with the game. And if Coach Murphy ever saw that his team was down, he was going to do something to spark them, right? It was either going to get underneath someone's skin to get them motivated to play, or turn the momentum around, or make a great play in the infield and bring it to the bat as well. So, good solid picks, guys.
Charles, we're back to you with your 7th overall pick.
Where to go? I'm going to go with this fella because he provided me with some names, and his name was mentioned quite often. I unfortunately didn't get to see him play because he was a little bit before my time, but he actually came through with the biggest list of names. He provided me 42 names here today, so I'm going to go with Mr. Tony Terrio. Not sure where I'm going to play him. But.
I'll tell you where you're going to play him.
Back to Laughn for your 7th pick.
You know what? I'm looking to put a little bit more speed in the outfield. And this guy was a teammate of mine. He was actually so fast that when he would hit the softball, he would take his hat off. He'd rip his hat off his head so that when he started to run, it wouldn't fly off. I'm going with Buddy Gardner.
Buddy, I had him on here. Yeah, that's a good pick. He played anywhere too.
Yeah, he could. But I always had to laugh, man. That hat came off his head so fast after he hit the ball.
Tim,
He
we're
played
back-
in jeans, not cut-off jeans. Jeans.
He never got a raspberry from sliding.
Tim, we're back to you for your seventh pick.
Okay, first base. In his younger years, he was a shortstop. I seen him play first base on our team once or twice, and he played some first base here. At the plate, this guy was automatic. It was a hit every time, all the time. Out of 100, it was a base shot, double, 99 times. And his nickname, I used to call him Fat Mark because we had a skinny Mark. But it's Mark Beaulieu from Madawaska.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah. And he could play. He could play short. In his day, when he was younger, he could play infield. He was a crazy infielder. But for men's softball, later on, he lost a little bit of range, and it was his back. He went to first, but at the plate, I mean, he was automatic.
Let's bring in Lorne for his thoughts on round number 7.
Yeah, it's great to hear all these names again because I can remember, when I hear the names, I remember what they were like as players. And Mark was a Madawaska boy. He came in and he played. I think he played for a lot of the Lakeview teams, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a lot of success. He was a fun guy to watch play. And yeah, Buddy was fast around the bases, and he wasn't losing that hat though. It was kind of comical. You'd almost want him to just leave it alone, but no, he was grabbing it to go. And a good solid defender as well in the outfield. Lots of speed. Your outfield, Lonnie, is looking really good. You're going to cover a lot of ground out there.
Well, we're only going 3 outfielders, so you need some speed out there.
Oh, right, perfect.
His outfield's not even close to my outfield. What the fuck's the matter with you?
Listen, I got Phil on the mound. None of them are getting to the outfield.
You know what? I'm gassing up my truck, Lauren. What's your address?
Yeah, I know. I figured Tim was coming after me at some point. Charles, I'll tell you right now where you're going to put Tony. You're going to put him at third base. He was solid there, man. And he was like a vacuum, and he had a good, consistent arm. I mean, he was a strong arm, but he was very consistent. He didn't blow a lot of balls over there at third. And I remember one night, if you remember, the sun used to come down a little early sometimes in that first game, and the third baseman, man, and shortstop had a heck of a time seeing the ball. And I saw him take more balls off the shins or off the hip or what have you, but he was so stubborn. He just stayed right there and took every one of them. And wouldn't you know it, I mean, it always paid off for his team in some way. So he was tough there for sure.
Yeah, very positive.
Yeah.
I started out playing with Tony and Dave Michaud, and that group was in construction. Tony was just very positive guy. Very, you missed the play, he said, "Hey, make the next one. It's okay. Good try."
Yeah.
Very positive. Yeah.
So you didn't get along too well, though.
Got along great. I listened to my elders, Charlie.
Okay. I'll be good the rest of the way here.
So before we get to our next round
Charlie, you're still scared of him, aren't you?
Definitely. I work for him. Don't forget, I've worked for him.
I think, well, the question, Charlie, am I more intense competitor or boss?
Oh, competitor for sure.
Yeah.
Competitor for sure.
I respected you, Charlie.
Oh, man. One love.
I still do.
Same here.
Very good guy.
So before we get to our next round here, I just want to.
Hey, Tom, make sure you cut that out that I gave him a compliment, all right?
No, we'll cut that out. We'll edit that out. Before we get to the next round here, I just want to bring in Lon. So Timmy just mentioned one thing. He mentioned Brzezin's Constructions as a team name, and that's what I'm getting a crack out of is just some of these team names and stuff like that. So for those of us that are a little bit younger and weren't really familiar with the softball league. Just tell us about the softball league. I mean, we're here in Lakeview, you had a team and stuff like that. So I'm guessing you kind of got into it really young with your dad kind of getting into it as well. So what was the softball scene like in Fort Kent?
So when my dad played, I remembered he had the hotel. He played for the hotel, and so he had the jersey that was the Lakers jersey. I remember wearing that when I was a kid. The team names. It's kind of funny, the team names as you go. I think they had there was the Excavators at one point, Arcadia at one point. BJ's had a team. Village Squire had a team. And then there was Silver Wah.
Baby.
The Silver Wah, the Dirt. I think it was the Dirt Devils. Was it the Dirt Devils?
Yeah.
And then Camille's might have had one.
The what?
And then Camille's. I feel like they were a team. But then we had, the Lakeview Aces. We had Rock Steiner. What else do you guys have, Timmy? What do you remember? You probably have a couple more.
Performa.
Yeah.
And what did Tool and Die?
That's right, Tool and Die. I mean, and again, when I started, it was the St. Francis team was John's Country Store.
Country Store, yeah. And when we started, we were based out of St. Francis, but we were the Lightning. Yeah.
No, there was a lot of good times and a lot of teams and a lot of good sponsors. I mean, the town and the different establishments, I think they took a lot of pride in being able to sponsor a team.
So would they sponsor, pay your dues, and then show up to the establishment after and get a few free cocktails? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think there were some places that were like that. I think I think back when my father played, and then when Murph played, I think they played for a lot of teams that were sponsored by the bars.
Yeah.
Between those team names and the Little League teams, just a bunch of classic team names for Fort Kent baseball, softball. So back into the draft here. We're going back to Tim with your 8th pick.
Okay. First, I need a catcher. And I'm torn. My brother was a great catcher and didn't have a lot of power, a lot of base shots here and there. I've always liked the power and had gone with a big lineup. So I'm going to go with Will Coop, the old man. Coop catching. He hit from the left side. He hit the ball a country mile and was fast. He was just a blur, man. But that guy, and he had a good character. He was funny. He was really kept us up, and I'm doing a lot of old school guys, because that's who I played with, and that's who I think now the younger guys, well, they're more into looking good and talking trash, right, Lonnie?
Hey, I feel like Coop was another one of those guys that had to take his hat off when he ran.
Yeah. True.
No, he didn't. He had a hard time keeping his clothes on when he ran. He ran so damn fast. But he was a good guy to have around, and he had a hell of a stick.
We are back to Laughn with your 8th pick.
Let's see. You know what? I'm going for a guy behind the plate too, and I just had a lot of respect for the guys that were older when I came up playing, or the guys that played for me. And again, I like the groups that we played with, but when you can stick it out for a long time and play over a long period of time like Timmy has, I mean, he's still playing. I got a lot of respect for that. This guy was a guy that was he sort of moved around, and when I got there, he was a catcher, but he was powerful. I thought he was solid, and I think this is a good pick. I am going with Jim Violet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. I had him as a catcher, too.
Charles, we're back to you with your 8th pick. We have about a bunch of names off the board, but just small in comparison to your list of 300. So
I know. I'm gonna go and give respect to without this person, I would have never got to experience the Forcan softball league because he used to let me tag along. I don't know what years. This is probably early 90s this league was taking place, guys. So I would have been like maybe 7 to 9 years old, maybe 10 years old. But my Uncle Kerry used to bring me to all these games. I looked up to him a lot. From what I remember, he was fast as hell. So I'm anxious to hear your opinion on him. I'm just going based on the fact that he brought me along and he was very fast. Maybe it's because I was so young, but he was pretty quick, and he's also he's kind of buff, so he wasn't that big back then. But one love to Uncle Kerry here.
Yeah, and I feel like Tim might have been talking about Uncle Kerry with one of these young guys who just cared about looking good back in the day. I feel like Kerry put the bill right there. All right, Lorne, your thoughts on round number 8? Will Cooper, Jim Violet, Kerry Legacy.
Yeah, so my freshman year baseball at the high school, Kerry was on the team with, I believe, the Legacy boys, the Legacy twins as well. And that was
Jim and John.
Yeah, that was kind of a fun team to kind of be with my first year. Yeah, Kerry was a solid. He played the infield for us and did a really good job. Jim Violet, may he rest in peace. I remember there was a couple of years that he played with Phil Labby, and Phil would be pitching, and of course it'd be late in the game, and Phil would just step, to take his warm-up pitches, he'd step like 2 or 3 feet off the rubber and just wind up and throw as hard as he could, a fast, overhand. And Jim would stand right there, and that glove would never move. And I mean, that ball was probably coming in the high 80s. And Jim just stood there and took it. And so I always remembered that. But he was a good guy to have on your team, and he was a solid hitter. Yes. And then Coop was another one. When he caught, man, he and I had a good time. If he ever felt that I missed a strike, because he was left-handed too, right?
Yeah. He'd
extend that arm a little bit further back, and he'd bonk me in the nose before he'd throw it back to the pitcher. But it's a good thing that in slow pitch you don't have they don't allow steals, because he'd be on third base all the time. He was fast and good hitter, and you're right, and he was a good guy to have on your team.
So before we get to our last round of picks here, I want to bring Tim in. So Tim, you were talking about how you started off young, very young age, playing for what team was it? The Lightning, you said?
Vozin's Construction.
Vozin's Construction. Just curious what it was like back then, kind of coming into softball and playing men's softball. What was the environment like? What was the culture like? Did you kind of have to come in and earn your spot and kind of ride the bench for a little bit, or if you were good, did the guys just let you play? What was it like when you were coming up?
I went in for numbers, and they just kind of knew that I loved sports. And Billy was Tony's stepson at the time, Billy Terrio, or Billy Kennedy. So they asked me to play, and was with Dave and an older crew. So you didn't expect to play. You just wanted to be there with the older guys and learn. It was a totally different game than baseball, and it was fun, and the atmosphere was competitive. They would talk on the benches and be like, hey, guys, we better play well. This is a good squad, and, we don't like this guy and that guy, and get a little heated and a little at each other. But the culture was competitive. You took pride in it. When you walked off the field and you beat somebody in men's softball, you took pride in it. And it was like any other sport. You played basketball, Tom, so in your college ball and high school ball, when you beat a good team, it felt good. And that's how it was. And you waited your turn. And when you got in there, you made plays so that they were like, oh, wow, we got to get him in there sooner. So you had to earn your spot. And when I finally got in there, I earned some playing time, and then I ended up getting recruited by the Lightning. Tracy Hart put a team together, and I earned my spot there too. So the culture was like anything else.
And just curious now, so now you're still playing nowadays. So curious what it's like being on the opposite end of the spectrum, one of the older guys now. How has that changed for you? Like, do you get annoyed with some of these younger guys? You talked about how they like to just care about how they look and stuff like that. Do you get frustrated with some of these younger guys nowadays?
I tell them to shut the fuck up. If I do get annoyed with, I really wasn't a talker. I wasn't a trash talker. I didn't like trash talking. I worked hard. I wanted to be better than myself the last time I went out. I didn't need to be better than my teammates. I didn't need to be better than Steve Jalbert, who I grew up with. I wasn't going to be. We played two different positions. I wanted to be better than myself the last time I played. And I wanted to be able to walk off the field thinking, like, you know what, I made a few gritty plays. I was better than my last outing. We won the ball game. Great. It was all about the team. It was all about the W. So, but the younger generation now down in Waterville, I play in Waterville, play in Portland. I've seen a lot of those umpires. I played against a lot of those guys. Usually when I tell them, hey, listen, shut up, enough trash talking, they shut up. Mm. They just get it. So.
And Tim, let the viewers know that you're still playing and you just competed at Worlds. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, Worlds quite a complex in Florida. I got recruited on a team out of Old Orchard to go to play. It's a different game. It's U-Trip, Lorne. And the rules are a little bit different than ASA. The arc is a little different. You can fake pitch. After you fake a pitch, you have 5 seconds to release while you're on the mound. You can do some different things. The bats are hotter. The bats are, it comes off the bat pretty hard sometimes. The balls are a little bit harder. It's competitive and it's big now, where ASA is kind of taking a step back, and this U-Trip has come up. They keep stats, and so we won a few tournaments. We played in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, got invited to Worlds, went down there. We played 5 games. We won 3, lost 2. We placed 25th out of 93 teams. I played with 20. I was a starting third baseman. It was a decent mixture of guys. Had a couple of older guys, few years older than me, and the rest were all 20-year-olds. So we held our own. We did well, and I'll stop when I don't think I can contribute. So I'm still doing all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll say this too. Like when Timmy was playing third base. The balls come down fast at third base. When I first started playing for St. Francis. Again, I'm a freshman in high school, and I'm at third. And guys like Timmy come up and with the big eyes, and they go, "I'm gonna hit it at this guy." And it comes fast down at third. And so for somebody that can stand in front of the base or in line with the base, and his reaction was so good. And the fact that Tim says, hey, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna try to be better than I was yesterday. He set the bar so high all the time that it's pretty incredible that he can go out each day and try to be better than he was yesterday, because he was one of the guys that was money all the time.
Absolutely.
I just have one question for Tim though. Does it still take you 20 seconds to get in the batter's box?
Yeah.
He used to hold up the game, man. He'd keep that left foot out, just waiting for the pitcher to get set, and then it would take him forever to get ready himself. Oh my God, It drove me crazy.
Yeah, but he was doing that. He was doing that, Lauren, when you called the ball a strike. He was just letting you know, I'm not getting back. He just screwed that one up.
Yeah. Lots of
in regards to the balls and the bats, are the pitchers still throwing from the same distance, or are they a step back?
Same distance. They can be within, I don't know if it's 16 inches of the rubber. So they don't have to be on the rubber. And these guys, these pitchers, they wear catcher's equipment. There's not a pitcher at the Worlds that didn't have equipment, because if he didn't, he was getting rib shots. And it's fully, they're fully equipped, and they get it line shots off the mask, not because they aren't good. They just can't react fast enough. That's how hot the bats are. in the balls. So
That's awesome.
But
So we got one more round to go here. So just to recap, before you guys make your pick, I'll recap your team. So Charles is back on the clock so far. He's got Phil Labby, Tracy Hart, Kevin Bouchard, Travis Delisle, Jim Gervais, Jeremy Desjardins, Tony Theriault, Uncle Kerry Legassi.
Yeah.
Where are you going with your ninth and final pick, Charles?
I'm a loyal guy, and this guy is like a big brother to me. He's a big old teddy bear who loves the game of softball more than anybody. Nobody has a better laugh. The best story I have about this pick is when we went down to States. I was basically his designated runner. I didn't play much, but he got me drunk the night before at the bar. First game, he's batting second. He gets on. Dude, come run for me. I'm like, dude, I'm hungover. I can't run today. Dude, run. So I'm going with Eric Berby.
All right. I was wondering when Berby was going to get drafted. I like that. Back to Laughn, just to recap your team: Lloyd Susie, Louis Morrow, Paul Marquis, Sean Corsi, Bob Parent, Leroy Marquis, Buddy Gardner, and Jim Violet. You have one more pick.
All right, so I'm staying with those old school teams. I'm banking on Lorne, trying to remember the old school legends, but I'm going with a guy that big influence on my life. Obviously, the earliest influence was a slick infielder, and he was a hitter that was he was a placement hitter and fast runner. But he was so good, his glove didn't have 5 fingers, it had 6. I remember using that when I was growing up, the old 6-finger glove. I'm going with Laughn Berthiaume.
All right.
What is the story of the 6-finger glove? What is this?
So it's basically the pocket didn't have a pocket. It had the 6th finger that was sewn in. So it was just a 6-finger glove.
Wow.
Tim, back to you for your final pick. Just to recap: Steve Perro, Steve Jalbert, Tommy Desjardins, Bob Lord, Roderick Thibodeau, Larry Murphy, Mark Beaulieu, Will Cooper. Last pick.
Well, I'm going to go with one of the original bad boys from the Lightning. Just a good guy to have around in case there was a brawl that broke out. Then he was extremely helpful. And I have to say, most of the time, I get the blame for starting him, but it was this guy, Rude Dog, Keith Parody.
Yep.
All right. So, Lauren, your thoughts on the final round draftees: Eric Berby, Laughn Berthiaume, Keith Parody.
So Eric Berby, he would have probably been your age, Lonnie?
He was my brother's age, Tyler, so 3 years younger.
Yeah. I think my brother might have coached him in when he played baseball at the high school.
I think when you were umping, Lauren, he played for the Dirt Devils.
Okay.
Burb.
Yeah, solid hitter and good guy to have on your team for sure. Keith Parody, Tim, I'm gonna have to take your word for it on that one. I don't think I got to see him play very much, but I've heard more than enough Laughn Berthiaume stories to live my life by for sure. And I think that's a really solid pick, Lonnie. I admire you for that. I'm trying to remember now, what Little League team did he coach?
Rotary.
It was the Rotary.
Rotary.
And
Yeah.
if I could steal maybe 2 minutes, I'm going to tell you a real quick Laughn Berthiaume story. It was they were playing against the Shop and Save team, which would have been Bert Levesque's team. He was coaching then, and Lucas was playing, and I think Lucas was pitching. So the story gets interesting already. And Fran, of course, was coaching, and I don't know who it was, but it was some kid came up and I was umpiring the plate. Some kid comes up and hits like that classic Little League home run where there's like 5 or 6 errors and there's a close play at the plate and the ball ends up by the pool, right? Ball goes out of play. But the player, when they came in, didn't touch home plate. So I'm staring at the plate and I was a young umpire then. I was probably tipping it off. Bert caught me looking at the plate. And so Lucas had gone to the pool to get the ball. When he came back into play, Bert yelled at him. You know how excited Bert would get. Bert yelled at him, go stand on the plate, go step on the plate. So Lucas steps on the plate and kind of looks like, what do you want me to do? And Bert says, Lorne, he missed the plate, didn't he? And I went, yep, he's out. Now, I should have started this story with, every time I did a Rotary game, at the end of the game, Sue Berthiaume would come up to me and say how professional I was, how great it was, the job that I had done, all this stuff. So I always looked forward to those Rotary games because I knew I was going to get a pat on the back from somebody. Nice. But I'll never forget Fran the man's reaction. Fran just dropped his head, put it in the scorebook, made the out, and probably had to console the kid, whoever it was. And he didn't say a word to me. And so I'm leaving the game on a high. I was pretty excited after the game. I said, hey, I made a pretty tough call and I made the right one. And of course, Bert was pretty excited and Lucas was celebrating and all this stuff. And I don't know who won the game. Anyway, I walked by the Berthiaume vehicle on the way home, and Fran looked at me and he said, Lorne, I'm not going to debate whether or not the player touched the plate or not. He says, you probably got that right, but there's a proper way to make an appeal. And they didn't do that. And I'll tell you, Sue Berthiaume made me feel really good, but Fran brought me back down to earth. and it was the first time as an umpire, and I've blown a lot of calls in my life, but it was the first time that I really experienced that. And, but it was a humbling experience, but it was a good one for me, a good learning experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the same as my father giving me the I'm not angry at you, I'm just disappointed speech.
Yeah, that's the way it was.
All right.
Lorne, I do have to say, Lorne, that you were probably the best official that I remember having behind the plate, either on the bases or at the plate. And half the time, I was just trying to intimidate you into the calls that I wanted. But I'd have to say 99.9% of the time, you were right on it and you were right. And it was when you were there and you were umping the games, I went to the games and felt like, you know what, we're not going to get robbed of any calls tonight. We have a good umpire.
Yeah.
Timmy, Timmy, that's because the other umpires were Nolan and Quaz and Neffy.
I got one thing to add too. So Lorne, if you didn't know, I was a varsity level basketball referee, softball and soccer, and I basically owe it all to your father. Started off like yourself at Little League too. So early morning on a Saturday, Ronnie Guy took us into the skating Jalbert Park, that green hut that they had, and he got my refereeing career kicked off. So special man, and I was saddened when I heard about the news. So.
Yeah, and Dad, I learned a lot from my dad off the field, but a lot of my life lessons came from watching him on the field too, right?
Yeah, great official.
And I'm going to tell one quick story about Timmy Desjardins, and because it kind of makes him look and me look a little bit silly, but they were playing a game, and I think it was the Lightning, and Lightning was kind of coming up then, right? They were starting to get good as a team. And they were playing against like the Soldier Pond team, who was kind of the cream of the crop in that league. And my uncle, Mel Belanger, who is a really good player as well, I remember he came into the plate one time, and I don't know if it was Tim that had thrown the ball or whatever, but it was a close play at the plate, and I came up with the safe call, and the catcher, I knew right away I blew it. I missed it. And but I had to stick to my guns, and I think my father was doing the bases. And so I got a fair bit of grief, and the guys were rightfully so, and I was taking a lot. Tim didn't say anything, and then the inning ended, and I tried to get away from those guys because I knew they were still hot. But Tim followed me right to the backstop, And I'll never forget, Tim looked at me and he says, "Lorne, what the bleep was that?" And I said, "Tim, just go to your bench." And he got upset to the point where he just kind of took his glove and did one of these, and it knocked my hat off. And I mean, if I was a little bit older and had a little bit more confidence, you know, he'd have been gone for sure. But I blew the call, and I'll never forget. It was one of those friend moments again. My father came into me an inning later, and he said, "You know, you could have come to me for help there. I probably could have helped you out on that one." And I said, "Dad, go back to first base."
Yeah.
Hey, Lorne,
But,
Lorne, just curious, have you ever had to eject anybody?
Oh, yeah.
And anyone that comes to mind, or?
Oh, geez, are you gonna get me to say the story about when I threw my brother out?
I hadn't heard that one, but if you want to share it, go for it.
I'll say just real quickly that was my first ejection, and it was probably good that it was my brother, even though we didn't speak to each other for about a week afterward. But what happened was my brother was playing first, and he came up to field. The grounder was kind of topped towards him at first base. No, actually, sorry, it was a throw, and the throw brought him up the line. So when he caught the ball, he went to swipe the runner on the back, and I think he got him. But when you're one umpire and you're in that position, you can't guess an out. So I came up with the safe call, and my brother said, "Lorne, you missed it." And I was trying to walk away, and he came up and he put the ball in his glove and he tapped me on the shoulder. And it surprised the heck out of me. I didn't, so of course I overreacted and I said, you're out of here. And of course, I remember Travis Delisle and I think Lonnie might have been there, or some other people would have been there, and they just erupted, right? They just lost it. I think it was the first or second inning, so Nathan had to sit the rest of the game.
I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, well, anyway, my father showed up to the game in the fourth inning, and of course he was getting an earful from all those guys. And yeah, it's just kind of an interesting story. But I can honestly say today that we don't bring it up often. But in the last couple of years, I've kind of said, yeah, I might have overreacted a little bit.
There we go. I like it. All right, so we've got to determine a winner here tonight. So I don't know if you guys need a moment or two to put your rosters together, the order, or are you guys pretty much good to go, you think? Lon, you good? Charles?
I'm good.
Charles, good?
Yep.
And Tim, you're all set?
Yep.
All right, so we'll start with Charles, who had the number 1 overall selection. Go ahead and give Lorne your lineup here.
We're just going on fielding positions. It doesn't matter batting order, huh?
Lorne, does it make a difference, or?
No, it doesn't matter. Whatever you feel, right? Just tell me who you're going to put where.
Yeah. All right. I'll start at third base, Tony Theriault. Shortstop, Jeremy Desjardins. Yep. Second base, I'm going Kevin Bouchard. First base, Tracy Hart. Am I going too fast, or is this good?
No, you're good.
All right, pitching, I got Phil Labby, the best knuckleball. From the outfield, you can see that ball dance. Behind the plate, I'm going to have to go Jim Jervis. Outfield, left field, Eric Burby. Center field, Travis Delisle. And right field, Kerry Legacy.
All right. I'm pumped that Kerry got drafted. This is great for him.
Had to. Again, he brought me into the game. He let me witness all this greatness. So.
All right, Lon, your turn.
All right, so we're going I thought we were doing lineups too. So I had the lineup all worked out too.
You can present it that way if you want.
All right, I'll go with the lineup. So we're going to go with Sean Querzy's going to lead off, and he's going to play left field. And Paul Marquis at first base is going to bat second because, like I said, if Quersy gets on first, which normally he would, he'd be on first or second. Paul's going to hit it to right, and he's going to get an extra base. I'm going Bob Parent playing second base, batting third. He's got that mix of power and placement. And then I'm going with the Big Lloyd playing third base, batting cleanup. Number 5 playing center field. Fifth playing center field, Leroy Marquis. 6, playing shortstop, Laughn Berthiaume. Now this is unconventional, but I've got my reasons. We're going 7th, pitching Louis Morrow. 8th, catching Jim Violet. And the reason is because I want Louis in front of Jim so he can clean up the bases. And then we got Buddy batting last, playing right field, which is a second leadoff hitter. So we're going to have Buddy and Sean and Paul right in a row again. I don't want anybody in front of Buddy that's going to slow him down. So we're going to have Jim clean up the bases right before him.
All right. And Tim, your lineup.
My lineup, I got Stevie P playing center, hitting first. Pappy, Roderick Thibodeau hitting second, playing right. Steve Jalbert hitting third, playing left. Tommy D. Jr. playing shortstop, hitting cleanup. And all three of those guys are going to get on. Tommy's going to hit one that it's going to take a week to land. And Mark Boyer is going to come up because he's very unselfish. If the bases are empty, he's going to poke that thing in the hole somewhere and try to get on second base. Then we got Larry coming up, playing second. Mark's at first. Batting fifth, Larry at second, batting sixth. We got Cooper coming up, catching. In the seventh hole. In the eighth, we got Rude Dog at third. And ninth hole, we got Robbie pitching.
Okay. So we'll give Lorne a second here to look at that. And Tim, I just want to ask you a question. So I couldn't help but notice a couple minutes ago you were very, very nice to Lorne in terms of the type of official he was. Curious if you were trying to butter him up here to have him vote in your favor here.
Are you insinuating something there, Mr. Clark?
I would never. Just curious. I just thought it was a little.
Are you trying to put me on the spot there, Tommy, old boy?
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna back down. I'm gonna back down now. I'm gonna back down.
You know what? I don't have to butter anybody up.
I'd like to say a nice word about Tim.
I can answer that. Tim's a little bit bipolar, where like in the middle of the competition, he's a ruthless asshole, but afterwards he's a sweet guy that has a nice conscience. But it's one of those every once in a while he has an episode.
But you know what? I tried to leave it on the field. On the field, it's competition, and everybody's a competitor. I tried not to take it off the field. Everybody's a different person when they're competing for something, or for a prize, or just to win. But when the game is over and you're off the field, it's all done. We're all humans. We're all just trying to live and get along. And I mean, if I happen to hurt somebody in competition, I didn't mean to. I probably wanted to, but I didn't really mean to. But I didn't want to take it off the field. I'm a different person off the field. I'm still intense, and I try to be very straightforward. And if I'm upset at you, I'm going to talk to you about it, and it'll be fine. I mean, in competition, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm tearing somebody's head off. but I guess bipolar. I guess I'd have to agree with you, Lonnie. That would probably be a correct statement.
Charles, you want to jump in there, Charles? I thought you had something to say.
Yeah, for sure. I like to give respect where it's due. And I had Tim as a youngster, as an early coach. Very, very inspiring, very hard-nosed, but he wanted the best. He's molded me into a fine young man, I'd like to think. Outside of the sports and the games, man, he puts everybody else around him first. He's a great father. He's a great husband. Maybe Roxanne. If not, hit me up. Yes. But no, I got a lot of love for Tim. I'm very happy he's here tonight. He's been a huge part of my life. He carried me through some tough times while living in Fort Kent, so I got a lot of respect for the fellow. So thanks for coming, Tim, and you're a good friend, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Charlie.
Lorne, you have a decision there, Lorne, or you still need some more time?
I do. I think I have a decision, but I just wanted to point out, I tried to do a little research myself, and it was a great way for me to kind of reminisce and remember some of the names, especially from that older generation. I'm just going to throw out a couple of names just so that the people who are watching would know that we didn't forget that older generation as well, because they were kind of the pioneers. But I'll just throw out some names here, and then I'll give you my pick if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. just and I want to credit Coach Murphy for this because he did give me his list, but just some names from the past: Bruce Simard, Benny Neto, Legs Labby, Mike Bouchard. Benny and Mike, for pitchers for St. Francis and Eagle Lake, they were tough guys to call because they were always right there at the top of the strike zone, right? Catchers would have been like Phil Bouchard and Jerry Neto and Paul Kiwak. Dave Bouchard, big old Dave there, who helped with organizing a lot of the teams in the league. Dean Fogg, Bob Carey, Wayne Joler, Russell Dickinson, Norm Bouchard, good old Norm. He had a knuckleball as well. Pat Vizin, Greg Vizin. There was an outfielder that was lights out there. I remember him playing Paul Sear. I don't know if you guys ever remember him as a player. Paul Sear was absolutely dynamic, and I remember a tournament where he dove over the outfield wall like 3 or 4 times to catch balls. It was amazing to watch him play. Jim Lavasser, Jim Willett, Cliff Smart. Remember Cliff with the old Lakers teams? Alan Bouchard, Roy Michaud, my father as well, Jim Guyon, Glenn Lamar, Nelson Simard. I said Gary Vizin already, Jim Thibodeau, my uncle Mel Belanger. He played for the old hotel teams. He was and Soldier Pond. He was a lot of fun to watch. The Thibodeau boys up in St. Francis, Gary especially, Jim Dumas, Conrad Sear, and the McBriarty boys, Alan and Gene. There was a lot of generations that were represented, and any one of those guys could have made your teams. But I do have my pick, and I got to tell you how much fun I've had doing this, guys. It's been great to kind of think about the times I had growing up on the softball field, and I got to say, Laughn, I really think you did a lot of good homework. You got the younger guys mixed in with some of the older generation. So I'm really proud of you for that. I knew Lloyd Susie would be at the top of a lot of people's lists, and I thought that was a great pick. Charles, I'll also tell you that if you can steal Kevin Bouchard as the 3rd pick in the draft, you've really done well, because Kevin Bouchard was not an easy out, and he was tough as heck in the infield. Tim, I'm going to give the nod to Tim tonight. He's going to be the winner.
Wow.
He's by far got the fastest outfield defensively, and he's got a pretty solid pitcher. Bob Plord had magnets on his feet. I remember so many guys tried to hit the ball up the middle, and he'd end up knocking them down because the balls would hit his feet, right? But of course, you got some of the older guys there too, with Coach Murphy and Mark Bolya. So it was really tight, though, guys. I got to say, you all did some good picks, came up with some good picks. But I certainly, and I like all of your teams. I'd be happy to take them to any tournament. But I certainly think that Tim just a little bit better, and not that I'm intimidated right now or anything.
You're a little far from me to knock your hat off there, Lorne.
It's a good thing, Timmy, you're at a social distance.
All right, so we'll go to the victor. Tim, how do you feel? I'm guessing you're obviously pleased with the team that you drafted, and got to be feeling even better after being declared the winner tonight.
Yes, but there is so many good players that I have on the list here. I mean, I have probably close to 75, 80 names that I came up with. And I made a phone call to one of my old buddies, Hart, to give me some insight on the past. That, like Lorne said, I mean, there's so many different. I mean, Jason Neto could have been on here. Jason Quersey, Sean's older brother, he was lights out.
Yeah.
There's so many. Lloyd Bonifay, what a wonderful right fielder, and his stick, he just poked it, all over the place, and not a lot of power. But and the Thibodeau boys, I mean, any one of those guys. I had Gary Tibbs in the outfield, but I mean, with the outfield that I have, I mean, it's crazy to beat that. But I think all teams were great, and it was part of growing up. seeing these guys playing with Lorne, Lonnie. I mean, we played a lot of sports together. Charlie, I coached you. I watched you. We played together. We worked together. I mean, it's, you know, I may be an intense competitor, but this kind of stuff I really love and I really miss. A lot of the good young athletes have moved away from Fort Kent, and a lot of the athletes I used to play with. And so it's fun to talk about them and see you guys. And I really appreciate you including me in on this. It was awesome.
Absolutely. So before we get up out of here, we'll just go around the horn. Final words. Laughn started off good in these drafts, won the first two, lost the last two, but final thoughts for tonight.
No, honestly, when you go around and you do these things, it's you know, obviously you're sort of competing. You know, Timmy is a competitor. You know, but for me, it's also about recognizing some of the guys that have played before and some of those big names. And you know, I thought I did that with some of the older generation. And it's fun calling people and talking to people and hearing their stories. You know, I mentioned talking to Bun Ross today, and you know, I appreciate that. But for these guys like Timmy, again, the competitive aspect of sports, I mean, he taught me at an early age, and I give him a hard time and we joke about it, but I like the competitiveness, but again, when he says it on and off the field is a little bit different for him. I get that 100%. You know, Lorne, I watched him umpiring when I was growing up. He was older than me. I drafted him in my fantasy Fort Kent Hack League draft. But Ronnie also taught me how to umpire too, and so I did a lot of umpiring. And I'll say when I was at the rec department umpiring, Tyler Berthiaume spun a couple gems against those Canadian teams. And then Charlie and I have done you know, hung out a lot doing this, and this is a lot of fun and sarcastic, funny, entertaining. I've had a good time with Charlito, and so Tom, I just thank you for doing this. This is awesome, man.
Absolutely. Charles, didn't win tonight, but your internet held up 2 nights in a row here. You got to be feeling good about that.
So happy about this. I don't know. Yeah, technology's carrying me through, but yeah, what a wonderful time I've had just researching all these sports. Like today I reached out to Tony Terrio and on Facebook Messenger, and he sent me a Facebook message that was probably, I don't know, 100 lines deep. Like he just wanted to tell his story of how much fun he had growing up. And Tom, you were too young to like realize how much fun these guys were having. But I remember as a young kid, like showing up to these games and like literally hundreds and hundreds of people watching these games lined, like any place that there was open spot around Jalbert Park, there was people. And it was, I have vague memories, but it was, I'm really jealous of you guys that you got to experience that for sure.
Absolutely. Lorne, final thoughts before we get up out of here.
I just had an absolute blast, guys, and just the opportunity to just talk about the old stories and the players and reminisce a little bit is I mean, I could do this every night of the week. Thank you very much. It's great to be able to reconnect with all of you because you know, I mean, we're all busy. We're busy with our families and such, but you're right. I mean, and maybe for me it was a little different in just the way that I was brought up, but you guys got to experience it as players on the field. And when you're an umpire, you really get to be a fan. And there's a lot of things, you know, I mean, not that you're rooting for one of the teams over the other, but you get a chance to show up to a game. You see a game. You get the best seats in the house. You get a little bit of money. You didn't make much money, but, you know, you got a little bit of money. And at the end of the game, you could go wherever, and you didn't have, you know, if you did a pretty decent job, you didn't have to carry the game forward, you know. Whereas if you went up to bat and you were 0 for 5, then you might be hanging on to that until the next time you come up. So for me, it was a great way to grow up and a great way for me to learn some life lessons. And you know, I'm glad I got a chance to redo this with you. And you know, if you had done this a few years earlier, then I think I would have asked my dad to sit with me and do this, you know, because he would have had some stories as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
My final thoughts before we get up out of here, just really happy to see the two Canadian Americans rocking Maple Leaf hats tonight. That's going to do it for tonight's episode of Big Time the Podcast. This has been the Fort Kent Softball Fantasy League Draft. Who knows what we're going to come with next? I don't even know where we're going to go, but more of these to come. So make sure you're checking out all the older episodes on YouTube, on Facebook. The audio podcasts are still on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So get them wherever you get your podcast, and we'll see you next week with another big episode.